Good day and welcome to Ramble On, episode 7, Armidale Regional Council's podcast. Great to be here. And as usual, I am joined by my podcast co-host, the Mayor of Armidale Regional Council, Councillor Sam Copeland. Welcome, Sam.
Oh, thanks, James. Great to be back here at Podcast Central.
It is indeed. What's your week been like?
It's been a bit of a funny week. I was in Sydney earlier this week for the LGNSW conference. We can expand on that a bit. And I have also been up at the airport, obviously flying back in from the LGNSW conference, but I went up there for a couple of good news stories.
Right, do tell.
Look, plenty on up there. We put a post out last week, but just on the council side of the airport, the airside business park, it's really popping out of the ground.
It is. Great pictures, great flyover.
Yeah, full marks to the comms team for that.
They're all over it.
They are all over it. But a couple of things to note, and I know I've mentioned this before, but what's being built up there is really schmick. You don't often drive past a business park and think to yourself, gee, this is going to look really good. But I've been lucky enough to see, just because I'm on that regional planning panel, and a couple of developments that have come through that have been approved are really smart-looking sheds, smart-looking developments. So the really big one out there is the Aero Health Care site.
Yeah, they bought a few sites up there.
They bought seven sites, and I think it's going to stretch over 6,900 square metres.
Fantastic.
So plenty of jobs there. The service centre, it's happening as well.
Great.
We're seeing a lot of yellow equipment up there. Preparing that, the New England Weeds Authority's site looks like it's imminently about to open. So then there's a few more on the cards. So I know it took a while, but we certainly got there.
I think it's also worth mentioning, Sam, too, that we have been quite fussy about what we've allowed to go in there, and I think justifiably so, given that it's so close to the airport itself and the runway. We certainly didn't want Sam and Jim's gravel pit, for instance, going in there. There's other places. It would have been a great business. It would have, but there's other places that type of business could go. The business that we were really looking for there is something that's complementary to the airport and that surrounding, and that's a little bit more high tech and will also grow jobs. So I think that waiting game has been well and truly worth it for council. And I think now that we're seeing a bit of activity up there, activity will breed activity, and the rest of those blocks will on sell, and away we go. So
yeah, it certainly tends to. So what's next then? I know there's still a couple of blocks to be sold, but people are eyeing a stage 2. What does a stage 2 look like?
Stage 2, I guess we've got to be a little bit prudent in terms of our finances and when we can afford that, but certainly the decision of council was to ring fence essentially any of the funds that were from the sale of stage 1 and use that to construct stage 2. And stage 2 really is more of a development on the airside blocks, some cul-de-sacs into that I think you again will find that will be very, very popular with punters in that aviation industry. And again, I think once that construction starts, we'll continue to see that boom and that expansion of the airside business park into what was originally envisaged. But and I guess we'll all have different views, but I think that there's a great opportunity for council once those airside blocks develop as well, in terms of potentially being, rather than selling them, because they will go for a pretty penny, but the opportunity exists to try and develop those ourselves and lease them out, and you've always got that asset there, and it becomes a revenue generator, which would be a great thing for the council to be able to do.
A bit of off-farm income doesn't really happen with regional councils. It's interesting. When we were down in Sydney at the Local Government New South Wales conference, just a stark difference between the city councils and the regional councils, and it came through in the motions and what was of interest to them. We found the city councils are really focused, their finances are in good order. They've got 50 kilometres of roads to look after, no waste, no water.
No airports.
No airports. They make a heap of money from car parks and parking fines.
Parking fines, yeah.
Yeah, that's a biggie, but very few regional councils have that, non-grant, non-rate, non-service revenue. So if we could develop some of that, I know it's high on my list, on yours, and many of the other councillors as well, to make us a really sustainable council.
Absolutely, I agree, which is a beautiful segue into the LG New South Wales Conference. How did you find it? That's your third now, mate?
It's my third. The content of it is funny, and it really is that dichotomy between the city councils and the regional councils, and what interests us. What the real benefit, though, comes from the meeting up with like-minded colleagues and shooting the breeze about what works and what doesn't, and that's always sure it's fun, but it's also really informative, and to have those connections just helps you when you need it. And I know I've been flogging this horse for a while, but that coalition of renewable energy mayors, all of the the people that I've met through that LGNSW conference is really what's enabled me to pull that group together so quickly, and for it to become a really worthwhile and a really force for good, if I can say. And following on from that, some of the listeners might have already been across it, but the New South Wales Department of Planning has released all its policy framework. They released it at 11 a.m. on Tuesday. It's revised policy framework for the renewable energy zones.
Yep.
And it include new updated wind guidelines, updated solar guidelines, a benefit sharing framework, and the transmission framework, and also a draft template for hosts on what that might look like. What was really heartening for me is a lot that what we had lobbied for, that co-rem group, has been incorporated, and that's a terrific outcome. Now, they're only draft, there might be a little bit of pushback, but a lot of that's been really good, and it's also for the community to have certainty is what's important.
Absolutely.
Yeah, the absence of certainty just creates a vacuum, and mischief always fills a vacuum. So these updated guidelines, I think, are a good thing. They won't necessarily be everyone's cup of tea, but there's plenty of opportunity to respond to them, give feedback, and I think the Department of Planning is going to be in Armidale on Friday, the 1st of December.
Fantastic, yeah. And I think if my memory serves me correctly, they've actually extended the submission date to the 20th of December now from what had been a shorter time frame period.
I think they have,
in response to council. So that's been... I was going to ask you, actually, if any of it looked familiar.
Look, it did, which was good. I don't know where that was created. Yeah.
And I think that the great part, I know we've mentioned it on this
Modesty
show,
prevents me from talking about it.
Of course it does. I can spruik that for you later. And I was going to say, the other great part about what's come out of the co-rem more broadly is that developers are walking into council areas now, whether it's Armidale Regional Area or whether it's Dubbo or wherever it might be. They know where the goalposts are. They know where they've been set, and nobody's coming in and trying to argue their case for something. There's always that starting point of 1.5% of capital value, again, which you can talk to much better than I, but it's just helped, I guess, regularise what otherwise was a bit of a bidding competition amongst areas, and and had some at disadvantages. So it's been a great outcome.
Yeah, look, and that component of it certainly is a great benefit for the region. Whether you're pro or anti the renewables coming, a prudent council has to plan for what's there. We can't really take an ideological stake in this, and councils have been removed certainly from the approval process. We can be, we can shape it a bit. We can't stop it, but a sensible council is going to cut the best deal for the region where we can, as opposed to take a philosophical stance and not do anything.
And miss out altogether. And I think, many people may not be aware, but I think that has been a great stance that, that you and council more broadly have taken in terms of if it's felt that a development's not in the best interest of the community or doesn't have a community benefit, then, council has gone out of its way to make objections to it or suggest, ways to improve that. So, for those that might be listening that think we kind of just sit on our hands and try to, rape and pillage these developments, nothing could be further from the truth. If it's not in the best interest of the council area and they're not coughing up what they need to, then that message is being sent loud and clear.
Yep, absolutely. I just want to hop back to the airport as well, because there's two other things that I wanted to raise. So the first one, I know we touched on this last, but I had the opportunity to go in the alternate route set up there as a cafe.
Isn't it great?
It is brilliant.
Yeah.
So, well done to them. They're a great fit. And you compare it to any other, by comparison, if you go into any other regional airport, which I, do on occasion, the quality of the offering at alternate routes, brilliant. And I know that they're starting to see people go up there anyway.
Yeah.
Just see it as a destination, not just something that you do as you fly in or out.
And that was what I'd noticed a couple of times I've been up there. There's certainly far more people in there than are actually flying. So you're right, people are using it as a bit of a destination to come out for a morning coffee or come out for lunch, and the offerings there are fantastic. So no, good on them. They're doing a fantastic job and it's great to see them in.
Yeah. The other thing that happened up there, and I went up this morning to White Star Aviation, who are a flight school. And that was fascinating. And there's a couple of things that I want to mention. So they were headquartered in Ballina and still are, but they've been searching for a few other places. And they came to Armidale, and I said, "So what brought you here?" And they said, "Look, we were talking to another town that I won't name, of course, but let's say it's a larger town, about 110 kilometres south of Armidale."
Right.
That has an airport and an air school, and they said, look, they'd been talking to this other council there, and he said they were just dragging their feet. And he said what was brilliant is within weeks Armidale had made an offer that they'd accepted, whereas the other mob, they'd been talking to them for 9 months and still nothing.
Right.
And he said they did, after they'd signed on with Armidale, the other council came back and said, yeah, I reckon we can do something. I said, look, it's too late. But what the fellow told me, which was great, is he said it's clearly the attitude of Armidale Regional Council. He said, sure, it was great initially, but that speed and responsiveness was something that gave him real confidence. And so hats off to you, James, and your team for that. That's a great thing. The other thing is I said, well, where are all your students? So at the moment they've got about 35 students there.
Yeah, right.
And they're looking to grow that out to about 50.
Wow.
And he said very few from Armidale.
Right.
So they've got a couple of houses in town that they put their students up in, and they'll just cycle them through. And they can be international students, they can be from other regions. There's some people from, when I was up there, from Coffs Harbour.
Right, yeah.
So it's great. It's a good business that's kicking goals and dragging people into the town.
And there's potentially a great career path for any young or older person, within the Armidale region that might be looking for a bit of a change or looking for a career. What better career to get into than aviation and flying planes?
Well, it's pretty high demand. If we take Rex at what they, at their word, that one of their main reasons for just suspending the Armidale service was lack of pilots. So we know there's demand there. When I was in Sydney, I had an opportunity to speak with the Deputy Chief of Police at New South Wales, Paul Pasanos, and he was saying the air wing there is struggling to get pilots. There's huge demand for pilots. So.
Before I circle back to LG New South Wales Conference, I just wanted to ask you something about that and get your views. But just on the subject of Rex, meeting with them on the 1st of December, anything you can share there?
Yeah, well, Adam Marshall's teed it up. You, Adam and I are going down 1st of December to have a chat with the chairman of
That's
Rex.
a bit of a coup.
That is a coup. I believe he's Singaporean. He'll be out, and the Deputy Chair, John Sharp. So we've got a meeting with them Monday morning, and incidentally, we're flying down on Qantas, meeting with Rex, flying back on Qantas. That won't be lost on them. But that's really to, hold them to account to their word and just see if we can't get some more concrete commitments from them.
Yes, indeed, yeah. Now, just circling back to the LG New South Wales conference, you touched on some of the motions and whatnot there. I was just interested in your view, I guess, on some of those topics that got discussed, whether you think they belong on an agenda as motions, and if you feel like I'm leading you into something, don't you? And if and I guess more broadly, whether that one association is fragmenting just a little bit, or just what you view on, over a couple of sessions now.
As I understand it, the LGNSW was an amalgamation of some a city-centric group and a regional group, and it's come together as one.
Correct.
Now, I wouldn't want to be too presumptuous. I've only been in this job for less than 2 years, but I got a real sense that the advocacy is very city-centric, and I don't think that's great. I think a lot of the motions that were put up were really virtue signalling. There were some things that were put forward that the individual council could sort out themselves if they wanted to.
Totally agree.
But it was all about virtue signalling, which means that organisations like Country Mayors Association, I think, is much more meaningful.
Absolutely.
A much more effective lobby group.
Yeah.
I'd have to say LGNSW didn't deliver other than provide a really good venue to catch up with, like-minded individuals to share, solutions, work out solutions to common problems. Yeah,
I would agree. And probably for the first time, my observation was that for the first time since the merge of what was the Local Government Association and the Local Government Shires Association into one association, I was starting to see a little bit of testiness and a little bit of fragmentation. That's the first time I've probably seen that since they merged, probably 10, 12 years ago. And which doesn't bode well if that's going to continue. So I think there's a survey form out at the moment, actually.
Is there?
I'll be sure to fill that out. Yeah, I think it's incumbent on all of us to pass that back to them. That now would be a good time to check that. But very good. So council meeting next week.
Yeah, council meeting next week on Wednesday. I wish I could say there was some really interesting stuff in there. But I'm putting that to you and your officers, because there isn't really. We didn't have anything fascinating like the tom turkeys that we spoke about last time.
You got nothing, have you?
Got nothing.
There's been it's one of those. Occasionally, it's a real timing thing in terms of the business paper, and as we know, council's been doing a lot of work on the local strategic planning statement, or the LSPS, and also the local housing strategy, which are going to be really two key strategic documents that are going to take this region forward and help it realise its potential. But we had been hoping to have those to council in November, but we would, what we decided amongst the team was that we were probably better to take that little bit longer, an extra week, get it right, and have it not be able to be rejected by the Department of Planning and any other state authorities, and then present it to council so it was at its absolute best and was delivering what was expected. Yeah. So council can expect that at its December meeting. December
will be good, and look, I'm glad you've taken the time to do that, because we're better getting a really good outcome with the state government. That's more important than making an interesting meeting in November.
Yes, very true. So
that's true. Actually, one of the things that is in there that I had a look at, and this will take a little bit of thinking about, and I wouldn't want to preempt too much what council decisions will be, but it's an update on where we're at with Project 030, which is for our region to be net zero by 2030, which is pretty optimistic approach. And so what's going to come forward is the baseline. What are our baseline emissions? And the biggest emitter is agriculture. which is about 70%. Then it's energy, and then it trickles down to a few other bits and pieces. But it's going to be really important for council to think about, well, what can it directly impact and influence, or what's its responsibility? What can it influence, and what should it just be concerned about? I was at a really interesting discussion yesterday out at the CSIRO. Jason Strong, who's the head of the MLA, he used to be head of AACO and everything, but there's going to be some, with those emissions, there are going to be some things that the industry itself really has primary responsibility to look after, and that's agriculture certainly falls into that. I don't want our podcast listeners to think, well, Armidale Regional Council is now going to start making policy about cattle, etc., etc. It probably is going to be industry led, not necessarily regionally led, because I think industry has a far greater stake in that. So it's going to be an interesting discussion tomorrow. But it really is an update on where we're at, and then there's going to be more workshops and things down the track.
Yeah, it's a good paper. Having read it, I had the opportunity to read it. It's I guess it just sort of sets the scene and just generates that level of debate. I mean, any opportunities that you see where council can dip its toe in the water and make its contribution?
Yeah, I reckon there's a few. One would be to generate our own energy.
Yes.
So we might just sort of beaver away in the background and come up with a few things there. So if we could be generating our own energy as opposed to importing it is number one. The other bit that would be interesting is, and I think that the baseline might need to be quizzed a little bit, two things in that. The first is we have a lot of national park in our LGA, for which we don't collect rates, but we get, all of the downside, none of the upside. Well, the upside is we've got pretty national parks in our LGA.
Yeah.
It'd be better if it was in someone else's that we could drive to. But so the question is, are those national parks taken into account when calculating the baseline? Because to come to a baseline level of emissions, there's some offsets, of course, with the number of trees that are there. So do the national parks get counted or not? Or has the state government claimed them?
Claiming those, yeah.
So that's number one.
That's a good question. Yeah.
The other one is, if the renewable energy zone is as big as it's mooted, I forget the number, but it's something along the lines of, given the amount that would be produced by our renewable energy that would be located here, that's the equivalent of planting about 500 million trees.
Yes.
So does Armidale get the nod for that, or is someone else claiming it?
Another good question.
Yeah. Third thing is, I reckon, if we do have to plant trees, one of the challenges is going to be availability of land. Who's going to want to, you're going to want to take your pristine grazing country and turn it across to effectively biodiversity offsets. I think there might be an opportunity for council to think about some council-owned land that could be a bit marginal to turn into, biodiversity offsets, which can lower our baseline, but also provides a source of income.
Absolutely. Great idea.
And then if you take that a step further, you look at the rail trail.
Yes.
When that's up and running and humming, there's in the Armidale LGA, it'll be 67 kilometres there, about 30 metres wide. Glen Innes will be about 35 kilometres, 38 kilometres. That could be a bit of a corridor there to think about a little bit about the biodiversity offsets, which keeps things in the LGA, an ability to make some money from it. I do know some groups are really keen to see that as, koala habitats and the like. Yeah. So, it's not just for, the rail trail isn't just for us locals here to use and the hordes of visitors that will come and fundamentally change the economy, but also the others, other groups.
That would actually be a beautiful. I mean, that 30-metre corridor that you're talking about, width, and that would be a beautiful tree-lined corridor to be able to ride up and down and walk and do whatever else takes your fancy. couple of events, community events coming up over the next few weeks. Christmas in the Mall.
So Christmas in the Mall, 30th of November.
Thursday, yes.
Thursday the 30th, and it is bigger and better than ever. Bigger, better and Christmassier than ever.
Santa back?
Santa is back. More importantly, Santa's reindeer are back.
Oh, nice.
There's a train there.
A train?
Apparently.
Right.
But, bit of a reveal, a new Christmas tree.
Lovely. Very nice, yeah. Well, we've actually, I've only been here a couple of years, but that gets some feedback every year, the quality of the previous Christmas tree. I didn't think there was anything wrong with it, but, anyway, apparently you've got to be 3'7" or something to actually get in under the bottom of it to switch the lights on and whatnot.
Oh, do you? Yeah. I had to go with that.
Did you?
Well, it looks like an upended cornetto.
Yes, yeah, it does, yeah. But a new Christmas tree, that's going to be very, very exciting. So I think... has
that been in the works for a while?
Yes, yeah, that's been... that was originally planned to be grant funded through the Stronger Country Communities going back about 12, 18 months ago. We missed our window there in terms of ordering it, but we've since been able to secure that and do what we need to do. So away we go. It'll be up and... in all its glory, and I think people will really enjoy it.
Oh, that's the shot. And also the Guyra Christmas bash the next day on Friday that the Guyra Rotary Club is putting on. So Santa and the reindeer will head up the hill.
Yeah, great.
They'll be glad to get up to some colder weather.
They certainly will be. There are a couple of really big events coming up, and so we'd ask all of the Armidale and Guyra residents who may be listening to this podcast to make the most of those opportunities and enjoy them. So what else has been occupying your time over the last week or two?
Lots, but not much from a council perspective that I can share. But remind me, is there anything that should have been occupying my mind?
No, I don't think so. Not that I can...
I'll return serve to you.
Not I can recall.
What about you? I see it came out on the council Facebook page. There's a fairly heavy resealing program rolled out for November.
Yeah, and the big news there is that we're doing it in November and not in sort of March or April of the following year when the weather's cool. So that's been a bit of an excitement. Yeah, so that's, I think from memory, we've got about $2.5 million worth of funding in this year's budget for the Reseal program.
Yep.
That's certainly up from where it's been in the past, and I think... which again, we talk about segues, but we always said as part of the special rate variation, the idea was going to be to put more money into roads and infrastructure. That's what people had called for, and so even just that little uptick that we've had this year in terms of the special rate variation giving us the opportunity to be able to sink more money into the road network. So, that will be, that will obviously cause a little bit of disruption to people as we have to close roads for periods of time and whatnot, but we'll get that information out nice and early to people so they know to avoid those particular areas. But, $2.5 million, that's probably one of the larger programs that we've had over the past few years, probably past 5 or 6 years. So very positive, and I think people can expect to see some good results out of that.
There's been a fair bit of grant funding came in over the last few years for pothole repairs, bringing roads back. Have we still got some money for that? It seems to me that grant funding gets announced. The same grant gets announced about 3 or 4 different ways at different times, but you only end up with one pot of money. Am I a cynic, or is that...
maybe mildly cynical, but there is a little bit of regifting that happens from time to time. But no, I think, again, I'm just calling on my memory here, but I think all up we got probably in the realm of about $4.5 million for a pothole fixing, for want of it, that's the technical term, that had to be spent over about a 3-year period. So again, part of that work just gets integrated. Any of the roads that are not featuring as part of the Reseal program will utilise some of that funding that we got through that grant a little time back, and just sort of roll that program out over the next few years and make sure that we spend all of that. It's just, I guess, like anywhere, because the whole state was lucky enough to receive that level of funding from government, it can be a little bit difficult to get contractors. So you've just got to bide your time and for us to wait, we've got a resale contractor locked in year on year, which is great. So they know that they're going to be able to look after us sort of around about October, November, about November, December each year, and then into the January. So that's something that we've locked in a few years back to make sure that we don't miss out. So, but yeah, I mean, just finding contractors and completing works, and then not suffering all those price hikes too that seem to inflict us from time to time, and lots of other projects and areas too is a bit of a challenge, but we're keeping on top of it. Lots of work happening in the Oaky Dam and Malpas wall raising space, in the midst of design and pre-construction tender documents at the moment. Again, that's a process that takes a little bit of time. We've got to get that right. It's not just, you hear the odd comment here and there. People might be saying, well, you got the money, why aren't you spending it to raise the wall? It's not quite as easy as that. There's a significant amount of design that's got to go into that, and getting approval from Dams and Water New South Wales, the Dams Authority, and a number of other agencies. So there's lots of bureaucracy and I's dotted and T's crossed that we've got to go through, but we're hoping to have that the design and pre-tender construction documents into us probably by mid-2024. And once we've got that, it'll be a matter of going out to tender, engaging a contractor, and then the build's probably a 12 to 18 month build.
That'll be fantastic. But that also gives us, we're then armed to go lobbying for cash that we need as well, with proper plans, not licking your finger and putting it up and see which way the wind's blowing. Yeah, well, that's incredibly important. I mean, I think you've said before, governments want to back winners, and winners have their ducks lined up. They have their plans ready to go. They know within a bull's roar what the cost's going to be, and then that government know that when they do grant that money, that it's going to be reasonably close, subject to any price escalations. So, it's really important to do the hard yards, get that pre-work done, and make sure that everything's the planning's the hardest part. And once you've got that, away you go. So, just speaking of which, probably good opportunities for us to bust a myth, and that is that any day now we're going to be draining Malpas to less than 50%, so we can start the work there. Is that a myth you'd like to bust or address? Well, I guess you kind of busted it in your previous comments. True. Because we won't be doing it in a hurry, but we've got the tendering documents. You're saying sort of September-ish 2024, yes, and then we've got to go out. But we do need to lower the Malpas water level in order to undertake, the spillway works. We do. But it's not in any day now. No, sort of thing, which is good. Yeah, and nature may very well take care of that for us. I hope it doesn't, but yes, the next few years. But it's and of course, critical to that is the work we're doing around Oaky too, which is also in that design and pre-construction tender work, because ideally we'd have that in place prior to the dam wall raising, and then that would just ensure that there's limited impact on anybody. But it's a bit of a watch this space. Just speaking of Oaky, which is probably a little bit of a myth bust that Todd and I did a few weeks ago when you were off injured, was we bought Oaky when we shouldn't. We already owned it, which is a myth anyway. But why would you actually pay for it? And I know we'd said that we were the preferred bidder. There were plenty of others. Well, you and I and Todd had our third meeting, or our meeting with a third group of interested parties to do something with Oaky. So the interest in it is building. It certainly is, and as an asset beyond water supply. And again, we've talked on this program too previously about the ability to have off-farm income. Well, that's a real potential opportunity for us that just supplements a lot of the work that we want to do and the region that we want to build into the future. So it's all stacking up very nicely. Yeah, so it ticks that off-farm income piece. It ticks the reduction of what would be our baseline, and it contribute towards our net zero There's plenty to like.
We're all over it.
We are. James, this has been our longest podcast, 34 minutes and 34 seconds. I reckon probably should pull up stumps.
Well, time flies when you're having fun, Sam, but no, thank you. Thanks for making the time for this again. Very good, and we'll see everybody next time.
Thank you.